with me because I'm a police officer, not a public speaker. So I have aligned all of my good friends here along the aisle so I can stare at them while I'm talking and not get too nervous, okay? I was doing good until my bosses showed up because I didn't invite them, but... Hi, guys. I'm here to talk to you about Alice. When I bring this up in front of the guys that I work with, they're like, who's Alice? Well, Alice is not a person. I will explain what Alice is here in a second. I only have a half hour to get through an hour and a half PowerPoint, so we're gonna fly. There are some videos that you don't get to watch, so I apologize. But I will tell you that all of these videos are accessible on YouTube, so you can watch these if later you want to look into this a little bit further. About a little over a year ago, we started discussing at Portage County Sheriff's Office our procedure for active shooter situations in a school setting. And we realized that the lockdown is old and it's not working. And throughout the country, the trend was changing and they were giving people more options. And there's many different programs out there. Alice just happens to be one of them. Run, Hide, Fight. There's a couple different names for these companies. So we started to explore what program we wanted to use here in Portage County. And I got sent to an Alice training in Kettle Moraine. And I went to a training just like any other training, thinking, whatever, 3 days off, I'm not going to work, hang out. You guys know what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden I came back more passionate about this topic than I've been about any other topic in law enforcement. I sat in that first day watching educators just like you with fear in their eyes thinking, I didn't sign up for this. We had people raising their hands saying, I'm not a cop. That's not what I signed up for. I'm a teacher. And Alice has a good way of saying, you know what, times have changed, and unfortunately this is the world we live in. And it's better that we prepare you and give you the tools so that we can keep not only you guys safe, but for sure our kids safe. So we have to change something. When I got back from that training, we presented to the 3 law enforcement agencies in Portage County Sheriff's Office, Stevens Point Police Department, and Pulver Police Department. All 3 agencies decided that this was the program that we wanted to go with. We then took that program to the 5 school districts in Portage County. There are 5 of you. Wisconsin Rapids is not represented here today, but we do have 1 school in our county that belongs to their school district. So in this year, I've had to go to your school districts, your schools, try to sell this concept. It's not about selling Alice as a business, it's about selling the concept. And there's some of these things that are tough to wrap our brain around, and it goes against some of the things that we've been taught for many years. But in this PowerPoint, you will see why we have to change. We were also able to get Wisconsin Rapids School District on board as well. So I presented at their school board meeting, and they said, yes, let's go forward with this. So in August, we held a training in Stevens Point, and we had every school district represented and also some large businesses that sent people, because this concept can be applied to any gathering of people, any place where you are where there's a lot of people. And we all know, we listen to the news and we hear stories, there's active shooters everywhere. So these concepts don't just apply to the school setting. So from there, we trained a bunch of our staff, some of you are sitting here today, some of our law enforcement. Rapids also then held their training a week later, and so they are also trained. So now it is time to roll out Alice into our schools. So what we'll do today is run through what Alice stands for so that you all have the basic concept, and then you will go to your respective schools and you will practice what we taught you. Some of your schools may not practice today. It's hard for us to get to every school in one afternoon, but the hope is to have it completely rolled out by the end of the calendar year this year. So we'll move into the slideshow. I apologize, I won't have time to answer questions. There are 1,000 of you, like I had to remind myself because you're all sitting right in front of me. But we don't have time to interact right now, but there will be people at each of your schools who have been trained in Alice, and they can answer those questions. If they can't, all law enforcement is available to answer any questions that you guys might have or concerns. Each of your schools are different, so it's not like a cut and dry program that applies equally to all of you. There will be differences to different parts of your building or different classrooms in your building. They did a study, 25 years of mass shooting events, and there's a national average of response time for law enforcement, and it's 5 to 6 minutes. Now that's an average. My county schools know that it's going to take a heck of a lot longer than 5 or 6 minutes for us law enforcement to show up. You guys are our first responders in the schools if an incident like this happens. So that's why we need to give you the tools to do something other than lock yourselves in a room. We practice all different types of scenarios. How many fire drills do we have a year? It's once a month if I'm right, somewhere in there. But we don't have as many of those issues come up, but yet we're practicing for that. We need to start practicing for events like this. There are 3 natural responses that human beings have. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Obviously, fight, we're going to talk about this in a little bit about counter strategies. Flight is the evacuation part of Alice, but right now we're teaching freeze, lockdown only, secure in place. And we'll talk about why that's been a problem in the past. I have to skip through some of these, I apologize. This is probably the slide that had the most impact on me when I went to this training, and it shows the Virginia Tech shooting, and it shows the second floor and the different classrooms that were involved with the shooters. The shooter comes in to the building, locks the building from the inside, chains the doors, knowing that as soon as he starts shooting, there's going to be calls to 911, and law enforcement's going to arrive. But he wanted to prolong that as long as possible, so he locked the doors from the inside, okay? If you look at the layout of these rooms, you can see room 206, 14 people in there. They stayed down. That's lockdown. That is what we do right now. They were taught, lock down, get under your desks, don't move. 10 were killed and 2 were wounded. If you look at room 211, 19 people present. Same thing, they locked down, 12 were killed, 6 were wounded. Now if you look at room 204, that professor thought outside the box. This is before these concepts were readily available. This is before we ever talked about Alice or anything like that. And he said, you guys need to get out of here. We need to jump. And the kids were hesitant. They're like, no, we're supposed to lock down. We're supposed to stay here. He said, you will have better odds of surviving if you jump. It is a second story, so there are going to be injuries, but you will survive. So they jumped. They also barricaded that room. They used the desk to put it in front of the door. Unfortunately, the professor used his body to hold that desk in place, and he was shot through the door. So we will talk about that. But this man was ahead of his time, and unfortunately it took us a long time to get this out as a nation, I think. But it worked, and it saved a lot of lives. If you look at room 207, the first time the shooter came into that room, he shot people who were locked down. The second time, they said, we're not letting him back in, and they barricaded that room, and they saved lives. And the last room, room 205, barricade. That's all they did. Locked down and they barricaded that room. That shooter never made it into that room. No, not one person was killed or injured in that room. So when I saw this slide, I thought, why weren't we doing this already? And I look at a person like this Virginia Tech shooter. He practiced shooting people who were either sitting or laying down, because he knew the drill. He knew that in a lockdown procedure that you went under your desks or you hid in the corner. So he would target practice at the range, shooting people in those positions. That's what we're dealing with. We need to come up with better ideas than just locking people into a room and hoping for the best. So as you can see, the fatalities were 28. That's the passive approach. There were 28 fatalities. 2 were proactive. I'm not saying that if you're proactive that you're going to have 100% survival. It's not going to happen. These kinds of incidences, we can't prevent all of it, but we can for sure better our odds. So ALICE is an acronym. It's not comprehensive. It's not like I'm giving you every answer to every scenario that's out there. When I went to Kettle Moraine, they were asking question after question, the what ifs, and we could what if all day long. And I'm okay with that. When we become police officers, we train the what if all the time. When you're driving down the road with your field training officer, they're like, hey, what if this happens right now? What are you going to do? If this happens, what are you going to do? That's what I want from you guys when you go back to your schools. You're sitting in your classroom, you've got a little bit of downtime, you're watching kids take tests, and you think, what if there's an active shooter right now, what would I do? That's our goal for today, is to get you guys thinking about this stuff. So it stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. And we will go through each of these steps so that by the time you guys go back, you will have all these tools and you can train using these tools. Alert. This is the first part. When I was at Kettle Moraine, one of the teachers brought up a situation where they had a kid with a bee sting and he went into anaphylactic shock. They had a phone tree. They had to use the phone tree to call 911. They couldn't just have the teacher call 911. That was against their rules. So they had to call 5 different people so that that person at the end could make the decision, well, do we call an ambulance? Now, if that's your kid, do you really want that amount of time being wasted when you could get an ambulance there right now and make that decision? We trust you with our kids all day long. Why wouldn't we trust you to make that decision? Same with this. We expect you guys to take some of that control back. When you see something, you say something. I think that's the motto in like the New York Metro, see something, say something. That's what you need to do. If something looks weird, or you see somebody walking through your building and you're like, that's not right, something's not right, you need to notify somebody. I'm not asking you to approach, because if you feel really that weird, I don't want you approaching somebody like that, but at least make a call. Hey, we're supposed to have this guy walking down the hallway. But you would be amazed at what people will turn a blind eye to because they think, well, somebody else must know something about it. The alert part is alerting not only your school, but alerting law enforcement. Don't assume that somebody's already called 911. Because I can tell you that I don't know how I'm so lucky, but I took an overtime shift in dispatch the day of the air show a couple years ago, and the plane went down. We had one 911 call. If you have a plane that crashes at an air show, wouldn't you expect that we'd be overrun with 911 calls? I didn't even know, I was in dispatch, I didn't even know for the first few minutes because there wasn't all the calls coming in. Because everybody made an assumption, somebody must have called. We can't assume that because we need to be coming, we need to be on our way. But again, we also need to alert the school. Locking down, that's what we do now. And that is still part of Alice. If you have the opportunity to lock down, that's the first thing you're going to do. We need you to get into a safe place. Make sure you lock your doors. But then we need to talk about barricading. In Sandy Hook, the doors were locked. That was a secured school. The shooter shot his way into that school. The children that were walking down the hallway, being escorted from one classroom to another, when they found out that there was a shooter, the teachers shoved them into a classroom and into this closet. They never locked the door. And that's where they found the majority of victims, was in that room. Not to say that a shooter can't get in through a locked door, but we have other resources available to us other than just locking the door, and that's barricading. We need to make it extremely difficult for them to get into that room. If they can't get into that room, they're going to move on. It's the path of least resistance. We need to make sure that they move on. If you remember the Virginia Tech slide, that room that barricaded, 100% right from the beginning, nobody was killed, nobody was injured. There's different ways. I've been to a couple of our lockdown practices in our schools, and last year, before we even talked about this, I had a classroom at Grant School down in Kellner, and they just put all these desks and chairs in front of the door. So when I opened the door and I unlocked it, I couldn't see anybody. It would have taken me forever to get through that. It's not perfect, and there's a lot of other ways to barricade your room, but it was a start, all right? There's a lot of tools that are out there. There's a lot of things that they sell on the market now that make it really simple to barricade your room. Things that tie off your doors. Things to think about is that you have doors that open in, and then you have doors that open out. The doors that open in are easy, because you can wedge, you can tie off. Doors that open out, they're a little tougher. But if you watch, as we're doing these trainings, we did Boys and Girls Club already. We did it there because they actually sent somebody to Alice, so they wanted their training right away. So they'd be ready for when you guys have training, and the kids know kind of an idea of what we're looking at. You'd be amazed at what they used. They almost broke a lot of stuff that day, but I was okay with that because they were being resourceful. They were looking around the room thinking, what can I use to wedge under this door, tie off this door, put up in front of this door, desks, tables, whatever it might be, cover up the windows so nobody can see in. They did what it took to make sure that the shooter didn't get in. Some of you will be working in classrooms with little kids, kindergartners, special needs kids. And it's not going to be like, hey, little guys, let's move this huge desk in front of the door. You may not get that. So you need to start thinking about some options. What are my options? If I can't get my kids to help, and all I can do is maintain some control over them, I need to have a way to tie off this door so then I can move them to a safe place. So we need to start thinking about those things. The informed part is a unique part that I've never heard of. They're asking that in schools that have cameras, to have a designated person or a couple people who have access to those cameras and access to an intercom. And what they're teaching is that that person locks down, barricades in a room, watches that play-by-play on a camera, and gives that out over the intercom. It does a couple things. It gives the shooter something else to be thinking about, distracts them, and wondering what the heck, where's that coming from? But it also gives the rest of the school an idea of where this is happening. So we can talk about evacuation, which is coming up here. Countermeasures. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. This is where the Kettle Marine teacher said, I didn't sign up for this. I have training in law enforcement. So when the cops in that training first started that class, the instructor said, hey, pulled us aside and said, when we start doing the scenarios, please don't react, because we know that you guys all know how to kick butt, but we don't want you to today. Let the teachers do it. I'm like, all right, I can do that. So we're sitting there in a training, and all of a sudden, it was an active shooter in an open area, much like this. Shooter stands up, starts shooting people. He was right next to me. I can't just sit there. I tackled him, and I got yelled at for it, but it was worth it, because I took him down, and I took him down hard, right? But it showed other people in that class, she could do it, I could do that. And all of a sudden, every scenario after that, we had people just hauling across the room and tackling and swarming, and those poor actors just went home with bruises and injuries. But it showed that we can change our minds about what we're capable of. We can walk in today thinking, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm not built for that. I can't wrap my brain around it. But when it comes to survival, you are built for that. Okay? If this was your home, if you put it in perspective of being at home and somebody breaks into your house and you have to protect you and your children, you would do all of that and then some. Whatever it takes. And it's the same thing. When we train as police officers, we're told, you're going home at night, no matter what. I don't care if you get shot. I don't care if you get stabbed. You're going home. And you fight through that. That's what you guys have to have, that same mentality. You're going to fight until it's done. Okay? Countermeasures are exactly that. What they teach is this thing called OODA loop, and forgive me, I forget what it stands for, but it's a military term. And it's the process that our brain uses to do an action. So we have to go through this entire process to do that action. If you throw that off by distracting somebody, throwing something at them, or yelling at them, that whole loop has to start over again. And now you have to start over and you just distracted them and maybe bought yourself some time. So when we did the training, they would give us Nerf balls or soft things to throw at the shooter. And it is pretty interesting to watch how a shooter cannot stay on target. It's your natural instinct to duck, get out of the way, and you close your eyes, which means that if they have a gun in their hand, they're not staying on target. They're not finding people as targets. They're just trying to protect themselves. Now, in reality, what we're asking you to do during countermeasures, we don't want you arming yourself with Nerf balls. You arm yourself with heavy items, things that you can throw. Some of you can throw harder than others. And you throw it at them, and you distract them, and you yell, and you scream, and you do what it takes until you can either get out of there or subdue that person. In these kind of scenarios with the counter, we had a taser set up, and you can actually take the cartridge off, and there's a red laser that points at the target, and they had people coming at the shooter. You can see that laser all over the room because, and we're trained to stay on target, and we still can't stay on target. Okay? These guys might practice, but they can practice all they want. It's natural reaction to react to those countermeasures. Swarming is a difficult one. When we did this scenario where I took the guy out, there were lots of people that just took off. And I'm okay with that. If you're nowhere near the action, don't stick around. You can leave. Get the heck out, grab as many people as you can, and go. A lot of these school shootings happened in open space areas. They weren't just in classrooms. They were in commons areas, cafeterias, libraries, where there is no option for locking down. The lockdown feels safe to us. It's what we've been doing. We kind of got stuck in a rut and we just kept doing it, and it feels safe. It is super uncomfortable to be in a huge area like the cafeteria and have an active shooter stand up. It's uncomfortable, and I'm a cop, and it was uncomfortable. But you have to know what you're going to be prepared to do. So these guys, there were some close to the shooters, and they would swarm and they'd take that person down, and it doesn't take much. They took the biggest guy in my class. He was a firefighter out in that area, huge, big man, and they put 4 women on him, 4 of the smallest women in that room, and those ladies took him down. They took him down. It was good to see because it means you can do that. Any one of you could do that. I'm not asking you to do it on every situation. You don't need to be all the way across the room and come running in and tackle somebody, because again, you do what applies to where you are in the room when this happens. So if it's evacuation, you get the heck out. But if it's counter and you're right there, that might be you. The next part is removing the weapon. Now, obviously, you don't want to remove the weapon from the bad guy. You're going to be standing there with it in your hand when we show up, right? So they teach you to put it in a garbage can, lightly, don't drop it. Put it in something that's safe, that you can maybe sit on. Like they had little garbage cans, they put it on there, put the garbage can on top, sat on top, while the other guys stayed on the subject. So there's options, but we need to make it safe. We do not want that person to have access to that weapon anymore, but it's something to think about. And obviously you're contacting law enforcement. We should already be on the way, but make sure that somebody still calls. This is the part that most people have the hardest time with, is evacuation. Because there's nothing worse than telling a school administrator, we're going to have everybody in your school leave, and we're not going to be accountable for anybody. Sorry. Got kids running everywhere, I don't know where they are. Because that's the last thing you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to know where all your kids are at every single second of that day. And if you don't, you're in big trouble. This is different. Alice said it this way, and it's stuck in my head since the beginning, which was, I would rather count your kid 3 hours later hiding in the woods a mile away from your school than dead under a desk. And that makes sense to me. If you can evacuate, you evacuate. That's part of that informed part. So if we've got somebody giving a play-by-play and they say, all right, the active shooter's in the cafeteria, active shooter in the cafeteria, and you have an elementary wing all the way across the school that can get out, you need to start getting out. Now that could look a couple different ways, right? It could be that the kids walk right out of the door of their classroom and hustle right out if their classroom is right near an exit. Or if they're on the first floor and you've got a window, you start sliding kids through the window. Part of what you guys are going to have to do is start talking to your kids when we do lockdowns. When we do lockdowns now, we're not going to be practicing the evacuation with the kids. We're not going to be practicing countermeasures with the kids either, because that would just be dangerous. But we need to start talking to them. So when we're locked down, we say, we're still quiet, but if this ever happens and I give you commands that we're leaving, we're leaving. If I tell you to follow me, you follow me. If I tell you to hold something in your hand, you hold something in your hand. So that they get used to this idea that teacher's in charge and that it's not just lockdown and we're done. So we have to start using those words that when I'm in charge, when I tell you to do something, you guys have to do it. The evacuation part that we haven't really worked with our school districts on, but it's coming, and this is kind of step by step, is the reunification part. And that is something that each school district will have to work on. Where are we going to reunify parents and children? especially when we've got kids who are running all over the place. Because we'd love to say that we have a set reunification in place, but that's a problem in two ways. One, most school shooters are current students or ex-students. We don't want them to know where our reunification spot is. The other part is what if we can't get to that spot? They've done studies where they'll do a fire alarm, and they'll have the teachers walking out, and then all of a sudden there's a sign right where their exit is. And they stand there and they look at it, but I always go that way. And then they don't know what to do. It's just like trying to direct traffic as a cop, and you're like, oh, can't go that way, there's a crash. Like, no, that's the way I gotta go. No, you can't, there's a crash. No, I have to go that way. But no, actually, if you go around, I can actually get you out. No, I'm gonna sit here. Because we are creatures of habit. They will sit there for an hour because they don't want to drive around the box. That's not what I do every day. We have to start thinking outside the box. If all of a sudden that exit, which you always take every time you have a fire drill, is now blocked, you gotta go a different way. We have to think outside the box. Which way would we go? When you ask these Kettle Moraine teachers, they were in their own classrooms, how many exits are in here? They're like, one, the door right there. Look at all those windows. Think outside the box. Be prepared that you may have to go a different way than you're used to. This will be the worst part in rolling this out, is because you're going to have mass chaos. We as officers know when we show up, it's not going to look like it used to. We show up on a lockdown, everybody's nice and tidy in their rooms, and we get to go room to room and clear it. That's not what it's going to look like. We've started training that way, where we've had people running out, and our SWAT guys are like, what? They don't know what to do. But we have to deal with this as well. But again, to me, if you're evacuating, you are getting away from the threat. And with cell phones and the amount of technology that's out there, we will find you. But I want to find you safe. I do not want to find you in the building if you had an opportunity to get out. So this is a quote: in a moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. That's what we're doing right now. Lockdown is nothing. Some of your scenarios will show you what we're doing now, and you will get that feeling of, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense anymore. And you will get that feeling that I am a sitting duck, and this is what we're doing with our kids. This isn't right. So we need to start thinking of other options. As this progresses and as we get it out to the schools and we start working with each school, this isn't going to be like roll out today and never talk about it again. It will be, over time, we will keep working with it. We will work with your schools to figure out what are the issues in your specific school. That's me buzzing, sorry. So you need to know that we're not just going to drop this on you and leave. As law enforcement, we're dedicated to make sure that this program is successful, but that it's ongoing. As Alice does give out updates, those of you that are trained, please log on to your Alice website and check. This is the newly updated PowerPoint that went on after we had our training. So they're constantly updating it with new videos, things to watch, things to think about. If you ever want to see reactions that run the gamut from sitting there doing nothing to the most crazy reaction I've ever seen from a woman, watch the school board shooting in Florida. And I'll give you another way. But there's this little lady that comes up behind the shooter and whacks him with her purse. And he turns around as if a fly hit him, and then she kind of walks off. And I thought, oh my gosh, she tried though. Some of those people sat there and did absolutely nothing. But if you have time, though, it's on this PowerPoint, but I don't have time to show it to you because we're about done. But I want you guys to know going out today that we are going to be available to you. So even after today, if all of a sudden questions come up, concerns come up, please contact somebody in your school to contact us, and we'll come work through it. And that's about it. Thanks for listening.